Business law music. My country don't mess around. She loves trade for show, and this I really do know. But does she really wonder, but can't stand to see if he's walk out the door? I can't stand to end the taxing, cause the deficit is killing me right now. Nafta. 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 Nafta.
Before NAFTA, the Mexicans were facing great difficulties. Their wages were low and so was their standard of living. They had to use their low income money to pay for the high taxes. NAFTA is an abbreviation for North American Free Trade Agreement. NAFTA is an agreement signed by the governments of the United States, Canada, and Mexico. On 17 December 1992, the President of the United States, George H.W. Bush, the Prime Minister of Canada, Brian Mulroney, and the President of Mexico, Carlos Salinas, met up in San Antonio, Texas to sign the NAFTA agreement. NAFTA came into force on January 1, 1994. George Bush signed the NAFTA agreement, but it was Bill Clinton who brought NAFTA forward. NAFTA was considered as one of his first success. Within 10 years of the implementation of NAFTA, all US-Mexico tariffs were to be eliminated except for some US agricultural exports to Mexico, which will be phased out within 15 years. Most of the US-Canada trade was duty-free before NAFTA. NAFTA also seeks to eliminate non-tariff trade barriers and to protect the intellectual property right of the products. In terms of combined GDP of its members, the trade bloc is the largest in the world as of 2010. The goal of NAFTA was to eliminate barriers to trade and investment among the US, Canada, and Mexico. The agreement opens the door for open trade, ending tariffs on various goods and services and implementing equality between Canada, America, and Mexico. NAFTA has allowed agricultural goods such as eggs, corn, and meats to be tariff-free. This allowed corporations to trade freely and import and export various goods on a North American scale.
Alright guys, let's move on to the next part of this presentation, which is the key objectives of NAFTA. First, let us look at the objective of each country one by one. For the US, their primary target was to create economic growth due to access to the Mexican and Canadian market, and indirectly creating more employments, as during that time there was a high level of unemployment. They also wanted to ensure that less illegal immigrants come to the US by bringing jobs and investment to Mexico itself. As for Canada and Mexico, they both had their own motivation, but they are quite similar. They both had untapped investment opportunities but no capital. Thus, by joining NAFTA, they were hoping for more foreign direct investments. As you can see, they all have their own agenda, and the most common one have become the key objectives of NAFTA, which are to improve working conditions and create employment, as well as to reduce barriers to trade such as tariffs and taxes, as well as to establish or rather create trade rules for all three countries which will be mutually advantageous, as well as using NAFTA as a catalyst for more international cooperation and economic investment. That is all. Let us move on to the next section.
What does Malaysia trade on the international market? Mainly petroleum products, palm oil and electronic goods. NAFTA and its impact on Malaysia. It creates new distortion those between the goods and the members of goods of a non-member. The falling demand for the products of the non-member will worsen the terms of trade they receive for their goods. The concern particularly applies to flow of foreign direct investment. Investment diversion is the most important impact of NAFTA on ASEAN. FDI may be diverted from ASEAN to Mexico in the food, chemical, textile, metal and electronic sector, and from Korea to Mexico in the chemical, machinery, electronic and transport equipment sector. Malaysia losing 5 to 7% of its investment, which caused a 1.4% drop in their GDP.
Okay, now we go to NAFTA effects globally. First and foremost, NAFTA increased trade in all goods and services. Exports from the US to Canada and Mexico grew from $142 billion to $452 billion in 2007. Then, because of the financial crisis on 2008, the value declined to $397 billion in 2009. Exports from Canada and Mexico to the US increased from $151 billion to 568 billion in 2007, then down to 438 billion in 2009. Secondly, NAFTA boosted US farm exports. Because of NAFTA, agricultural exports to Canada and Mexico grew from 22% of total US farm exports in 1993 to 30% in 2007. NAFTA increased farm exports because it eliminated high Mexican tariffs. Mexico is the top export destination for the US. There are grown beef, rice, soybean meal, corn, sweeteners, and apples and beans.
Assalamualaikum. I will tell you more about the challenges of NAFTA. Okay, the first one about the job. Since labor is cheaper in Mexico, many manufacturing industries move part of their production from high cost in United States. Between 1994 and 2010, the US trade deficit with Mexico totaled about 97.2 billion, displacing more than 700,000 jobs. So in US, these 700,000 jobs were lost. Nearly 80% of the losses were in manufacturing in California, New York, Michigan, Texas. These industries include motor vehicle, textiles, computers and electrical appliances. Okay, the second one is wages. US wages were suppressed. Now all companies in the industry moved to Mexico. Between 1993 and 1995, 50% of this company moving to Mexico used the threat of closing the factory. By 1999, the rate had grown to 65%. Okay, for the third point is about the Mexican farmers. Mexico farmers were put out of their own business. Mexico lost about 1.3 million farm jobs. In 2002, Farm Bill is subsidized by the US agribusiness from the government by as much as 40% of their net income. When NAFTA removed tariff, corn and other grains were exported to Mexico by lower cost. by below their own cost. So the rural Mexican farmers could not compete with them. At the same time, Mexican government reduced its subsidies to their own farmers from 33.2% in 1990 to 13.2% in 2001. So the most of the subsidies went to the only for the Mexico's largest farms.